Hi everyone, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be coloring a grayscale page in this book, A Little Grimm World Halloween. And this book is by Karlon Douglas and Black River Art. Now, there are several types of grayscale images that can be found in coloring books, and one of them is like normal coloring book pages with black line art around the image and just some added shading details from the artist. This type that has like a photo or computer graphic illustration, and then it's turned into grayscale. So I've been having a lot of fun with these types of grayscale. They are somewhat challenging and I really like the end result. They just have a different look to them without that heavy line art. But with that, I do think it takes some pre-planning on how to go about starting a page, and then thinking about kind of the materials that are going to be used to help you with that page. So today I thought I would walk you through the process with this type of grayscale, and I'll be doing this page here. And I work best from reference photos. So anytime I can find a photo to use, then I try to do that. So for instance, like the cupcake, I had the front cover to help me through the process. All right, let me get back to this page. All right, so I did find the original artist that created some of these illustrations on Shutterstock. So I'll be referencing the colored version from the artist Larissa Kulik. Sometimes these images aren't printed the best, and it's just easier to see what's going on when you have the original to look at. All right, so challenges for this type of grayscale. And first thing, not necessarily with this grayscale, but just happens to be with this book and a lot of other like Amazon printed books, you might have some bad printed pages. So lines down the image and through the page. So I should have returned the book when I first got it, but I think I was just really antsy to work in the book, and I've already colored, 3 or 4 pages in here, so I've just, have determined that I'm just gonna keep the book and figure out what to do with these lines. So my guess is that I'll probably still see parts of this line when I'm done, but hopefully most of it will be kind of covered up or camouflaged. Okay, so taking that out of the picture, the next challenge is going to be the in focus and out of focus. So as you can see here, these foreground images are all nice and crisp and clear, kind of in focus. But then we have in the background this house with some trees, and they are blurred. So whether it's because it's in like some misty fog, or it's just kind of blurred out of focus, that's going to be a challenge, because obviously when you color over something, that's going to be nice and clear too. So thinking about that moving forward. And then also, if we look at the background, this all looks like it could be one solid color, but when you look at the colored version, it is broken up. So that's kind of why I like to have the colored version if possible. That way it just helps me kind of figure out what I'm doing on these pages. All right, so choosing mediums now. So the goal, or my goal when I first start out, is to add color without covering up the details. Okay, so that means picking mediums that have a more translucent quality, like alcohol markers or even like chalk pastels done very lightly. All right, so if I were to take a light gray alcohol marker and cover this up, you're still going to see all these little texture pieces and shadows through that marker. But if I were just to go through and color with color pencil, that color pencil is going to cover up a lot of those details. So that's just something to keep in mind, especially in this house area here. If you use color pencil, then you're going to be covering up some of these details that you might need. All right, so where I'm gonna start is what's easiest for me to see and make out. So that is going to be probably the pumpkins first, maybe these pillars here. So, all right, that is enough talking for me. I'm gonna go ahead and get started on this. And I'm gonna be doing some like speed coloring, some regular time coloring, maybe coloring off camera, but then coming back. But I try to give you a finished page at the end and talk you through a little bit about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. All right, so let's get started. I forgot to mention when talking about supplies is I will base some of these things with alcohol markers and then go back and shade with color pencil. It's not something you have to do because the grayscale shadows will come through, but I like having a deeper contrast with shadows, which gives it a little bit more depth. All right, the base for this banner ribbon will be a light tan, and just be very careful when first applying alcohol markers to this paper. You just need to have a very light touch because the ink will start to spread outside the area you intended. Without the black outline, it is not very forgiving. So I try to get close to the edge of the image, but not right on top of it. Now that the ink is drying, you can start to see the shadows appear in the ribbon. I chose a very light yellow for the pumpkins, maybe too light, but I do try to start with the lightest shade of the image, so whatever the highlight would be, which in this case will be yellow. But just remember, I will go back with color pencils and make them a little bit more orange. And again, I'm picking the lightest shade of gray for the pathway. These markers always look so dark when you first apply them, but once they dry, they lighten up. Okay, so this will be interesting to see if the marker will actually cover up the print line. So I'm using this kind of yellow olive green for the grass, and I'm gonna avoid some of the leaves, but for the most part I will just color over the leaves. Prisma Color pencils will go over the top just fine. Well, I'm actually surprised that it did mask that line, so there is hope that it can be hidden. I've chosen a few shades of gray. I have some neutrals, some warms, and cools to work in the brick pillars. Hey, now I've picked some various shades of orange for the berries, the leaves, and then, oh, some yellow for the cat eyes. I really liked the dark green hat in the reference photo, so I'm going to do the same. It's already printed in a dark gray, so most of it will be dark green, just a peak of green highlight. For the cat, I'm using a medium neutral gray, and then I do switch to a very light gray for the ears and like the lightest parts. Okay, and I've picked an olive tan color for the tree branch highlights. Using the lightest blue green that I could find for the moon, and I'm not going to worry about coloring around all these branches or iron. I just color over them because I'll go over them with a darker pencil or fine liner at the end. And then I'm also, because it's not a very smooth finish with the marker, which is fine because I want kind of those shadows inside the moon. So I'm just gonna kind of go over it and kind of stipple around where I want some of the darker shadow areas for the moon. All right, I'm going to take a look at the reference photo for the lights in the window. I'll color those first with some bright yellow pencils. The light looks to be the most bold thing in the background, so color pencils will work great to maintain that intensity. I'm using Prisma Color pencils because they seem to be able to go over the top of darker elements. I've decided I'm going to try out these Koh-I-Noor Soft Pastel Pencils for the background elements. I also have pan pastels, but for the house and trees, I need to be able to get into small areas or have a more distinct line. So these will give a softer, milder look, and I can control the intensity of the color by adding more or subtracting with using brushes or erasing. I have a few colors picked out that I'll be kind of mixing in here. A gray, a dark green, black, white, and a dark kind of golden yellow. So starting out with the gray, I'm going to just see how it's going to turn out. I just fill it in, and then I'm going to take a small like painting brush and just work it in and try to control a little bit of where it goes. A lot of it brushes out, and then there is a lot of dust, so I blow that off. But it is kind of nice because while there's a distinct line, it is not so sharp like if you were using a color pencil that it's going to be, you know, a bolder line. You know, I'm looking for kind of a hazy line, if that makes sense, because I'm trying to keep it with that blurry background. So this is definitely a layer building technique. Once the colors start to settle, some areas I feel need more color. So I play with just adding colors as needed and brushing stuff off as needed too. I have a big makeup brush to dust off some of the larger pastel dust, which also helps lighten and helps blur the more defined lines, which is what I want because it's already supposed to look blurry back there, so I don't want any harsh or intense lines. Okay, adding white pencil will help bring out those highlights. And adding dark will help darken in those darkest shadow areas. And adding a little bit of green and yellow into these bush areas around the house. All right, and then taking my white color pencil, I'm just going to deepen up those highlights. With the pencil, it's going to stay put, where if I used the pastel, then it would just kind of brush off. So this will make it stand out a little bit better. Same concept with the trees. I'm using the pastel pencils again, so using a dark green And I don't need to be real exact or follow the true lines of the tree because it will all kind of just blend together. The tree trunk will be the more distinct line. For the sky, I'll be using pan pastels. I have a turquoise shade, a darker green, and I'll also be using white. And then I'm using the little soft tip sponge applicators. I probably should have done this before the trees, but I can always go back over the trees if needed. Okay, so looking at the reference photo, I'm gonna try to create some of these clouds. I don't see any clear lines on the page, so I'm just gonna have to make up my own. I'll use a combo of the teal and the green for the remainder of the sky, and then going a bit darker as it goes up. All right, not worried about going over these branches. I'll cover them up with a darker color pencil at the end. And if it goes over things that were colored with alcohol markers, I can use the electric eraser to clean it up. All right, so I did a few things off camera and I thought I would show you the difference of what it looks like when you can go back in and shade with color pencils or just leave it as it is. I did do one pumpkin down here in a darker orange marker. That way you can kind of see the shading in that because quite a bit of difference between this color and this color. But yeah, so I did some here in the sidewalk, pumpkins obviously, the ribbon, and then the hat. I didn't do too much in the hat. I just kind of highlighted a little bit over here with like a lighter green color pencil. And then I took a dark gray color pencil and went through all the little fence lines and the tree again, shaded the leaves, shaded a little bit in these pillars here. Added a little color pencil spots of the flowers in there. So yeah, I think it's coming along. I still need to do the pastel around here. Obviously I'll work on this side, but I just wanted to come back in and show you what I did. So I'll show you a few things on camera of how I colored in the pumpkins and the banner here. Okay. Starting with a dark brown to get the deepest part of the shadow started, and then I'll work down to the lightest shade. which will be a light yellow. And then burnishing with a blender. Same with the pumpkins. I'm working with about 4, sometimes 5 colors, starting with the darker one to get into that shadow area, and then going towards the more brighter oranges and highlight with yellow. Sometimes I add just a little bit of highlight just to make sure I don't color over that section. All right, I'm taking a darker gray and going into the darkest of the crevices. And then I have a more blue gray, and we'll be using this more of like an overall kind of smoothing color. And then last, taking a white color pencil and just highlighting some of the stones. Now I can finalize the light in the window. Not doing too much more, just going back over with some of those bright yellows and adding in around the windows and surrounding area. Now, because there is supposed to be some like mist or fog, the light is hitting that fog and shining out more in front of the house. All right, feeling like I need to add a little bit darker green around the edges here. I felt like it had lost some of the color, so I'm gonna work on that. Finishing up the surrounding edges of the page, I'll be using more pan pastels. Now, in the reference photo, it looks more orange. I don't have orange, but I think this burnt sienna will be fine. I'll add a little yellow in there too to brighten it up. And then I'll just blend that with the green on the sides. Okay, to remove some of that pan pastel, normally I would do the electric eraser, but since now that I've colored with color pencil, I'm going to use the kneadable eraser because this will take off the chalkiness, but it won't remove any of the color pencil. All right, now to get all this chalk to stay put, I'm going to use Karlon Workable Fixative. So I'll give that a good spray and be back. All right, so now that that is dried, I'm going to use a dark gray color pencil, nice and sharp, and I'm just gonna go through and kind of fill in all these lines because after the chalk kind of went over it, it has kind of a hazy look to it. So I'm just gonna darken all these lines up. I thought about using a black fine liner or a gray fine liner, but I didn't want it to be too bold. I thought the color pencil will keep it a little bit more kind of a lighter effect and not so like striking. All right, this is a Ohuhu brand paint pen and just a light peach color, and I'm just going to highlight some of these little berries. All right, so looking back at the reference photo, I still feel like my picture doesn't have that like glow or kind of fog feel to it. So I'm gonna take a light blue, this is turquoise tint of the pan pastel, and I'm just gonna brush it over. So now that I've sprayed it with the fixative, I don't have to worry about my previous pastel stuff moving around. So hopefully this will just add like a haze, over the top of that. It's very subtle. I could have maybe used the teal color, but I think it's fine. I felt like the banner needed something, so I went digging in my scrapbook supplies, and Halloween seems to be one of my favorite themes when scrapbooking because I just had a ton of embellishments. I found this pack of rub-on transfers, and then I found some bats that will look great against the moon, and then I found a trick-or-treat sign that will fit nicely in the banner. All right, and because they're kind of an intense black against like a lot of this muted black, I'm going to just rub a gray color pencil over the top, and that will kind of take some of the intensity away. Okay, well, I think I am finished with this. Here are my final thoughts. I love the way these pages turn out, and I have fun trying to figure out and manage these certain challenges. Like the blurry house and the trees in the back were definitely challenges, but using the pastel pencils were key. It's not as dark or as teal as the original artwork, but I still think it has this misty look to it. Using alcohol markers as a base and then color pencils to shade takes it to another level. I hope you find this video helpful with your coloring journey, and if you haven't tried this type of grayscale, I hope this gives you the tools you need to try one. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I would love to hear from you. Happy coloring! See you soon.